What's the most terrifying, unexplainable encounter you've had with a stranger that still haunts you? Not the most terrifying or inexplicable, but one that still haunts me. I was 15, on a trip to see my dad in Europe. In a train station in France, I smelled something pretty terrible. I looked around and saw a man who was incontinently drunk, sitting in a pool of his own waste, both kinds, holding a bottle. He looked utterly defeated and miserable. He saw me looking at him and he looked back at me. That look has haunted me for 40 years. That's so sad. I hope he was able to get himself into a better place. At some point, he was someone's child, grandchild, sibling, student, friend, and he had dreams of what he wanted his life to be. Then alcohol happened. I really hope he was able to get himself into a better spot. Walking home late one night in a large town, not a soul was out. No cars either. I heard feet running up from directly behind me, quickly and quietly. My instincts took over and I turned around and talked to the guy as if I knew him. I giggled and told him he scared the shit out of me. I think I caught him off guard because he stopped running and looked confused. He started chatting with me, obviously was on drugs, and told me he was a carny in town for the fair. He bummed a cigarette off of me and left. Pretty sure he had something unpleasant planned for me, but surprised him with my lack of fear. What an incredibly skillful way to manipulate the situation. Whoa, I wouldn't have been able to think on my feet that fast. Well done. I did something similar on the L train in Chicago some years back. Guy in our train car started acting really erratically in a threatening drug-induced way. Someone tried to leave to go to another train car and that set him off even further. And then he got in my face a bit. I'm a woman, was in my 20s then, and would definitely have lost in a physical fight. Scary dude was wearing a very distinctive looking winter coat, so in my attempt to get him to calm down, I started talking about how much I liked his coat and asking him where he got it from. Somehow this worked. He calmed way down and started telling me about his coat. Lol. That coat was actually ugly as fuck, but I really didn't want to get stabbed, so I'm glad this tactic worked. I used to hitchhike on occasion around our city when I was a teenager. Mostly things went okay, but the last time I caught a ride, I hardly even looked at the guy driving and just got in, thinking about what I was going to do when I got home. I told him to drive straight down the street for half a mile, but then he made a turn that took us away from the street I lived on. He was going into an industrial area and I realized this was not good. It occurred to me to find somebody on the street, anybody, and wave to them. They would see me in the truck with this guy and it could come back to haunt him if he did anything bad. So I saw a teenager who was probably just a year or two older than me, and I waved and smiled and waved some more. I laughed and said, "Oh, no, that was my brother." Now he's going to be asking me who I was with in the truck. The guy's demeanor changed immediately. He looked deflated. All his original cockiness was gone. I told him to go down a few more blocks and drop me off. So nothing happened, except that I never, ever hitchhiked again. It wasn't until much later that I realized how very lucky I had been to get away when I did. Thankfully, I never saw him again. My first time in Mexico City, I didn't realize what a bad neighborhood my hotel was in. I had just stepped out of the hotel and 3 men noticed me and started walking right over to me really fast and surrounded me on 3 sides. I literally jumped into what turned out to be a tiny bookstore because I sensed I was about to be grabbed. The only people working in there were 2 young girls, maybe 8 and 9. One of the guys followed me and had stayed right next to me, blocking my exit. And then, as if by magic, a door I hadn't even noticed in the back of the store opened and an adult male, probably the girl's dad, emerged. The man left the store and after lingering a few more minutes and buying some books out of gratitude for him probably saving my life, I went back to the hotel, leaving the hospital late at night in a sketchy area. Approaching my car, some dude appeared out of nowhere walking towards me and calling out. I stopped and said, "What's up?" The guy had ripped pants on and nothing else, very dirty with longer hair sticking out at all angles with bulging eyes. He asked, "Is it a good idea to give out your bank PIN number?" I replied, "Yeah, give me yours." He looked alarmed and said loudly no, then suddenly took off at full sprint. As he ran, I could hear him huffing and slobbering, trying to go like the Flash.at 12 years old. I was stalked by a grown man while living on Kadena Ave in Okinawa in the 80s. He would call me from off base and couldn't be tracked by the MPs. He would say frightening sexual things to me. My parents would disconnect the phone, but I always wonder why we couldn't get a new number. I think about this whenever this memory comes up. I thought he knew where I lived because he would say things that made me think he was watching me. He was also doing this to 2 other girls my age. Back then, we were listed in the Stars and Stripes newspaper as babysitters, and that's how he got our info. I can't quite recall how it wrapped up, but I believe he was eventually caught. It was a long time ago, but a terrifying year of my life.